The door creaked open, and I froze, my shirt half unbuttoned, the mirror reflecting my startled eyes. A stranger stood in my living room, his silhouette framed by the fading sunlight, a backpack slung over one shoulder. My heart slammed against my ribs. How does a stranger just walk into your house in broad daylight? I lived in Willow Creek, a sleepy town in Oregon where everyone knew everyone, and front doors were rarely locked. My house, a modest two-story with peeling mint green paint, sat at the end of Maple Street, surrounded by cherry blossoms that bloomed recklessly every spring. I'd moved here 2 years ago, chasing quiet after a messy breakup in Portland. At 27, Ethan Caldwell, was rebuilding new job at the local bookstore. New routines, new walls around my heart. But nothing prepared me for this. Who the hell are you? I demanded, clutching my shirt closed. The stranger, maybe a few years older, had dark hair curling at the edges and eyes that held a mix of exhaustion and surprise. His clothes were worn but clean, a denim jacket, faded jeans, and boots caked with dust, like he'd been walking for days. "I'm so sorry," he stammered, raising his hands. I got the address wrong. I'm looking for Clara Hensley's place. His voice was low, with a faint southern drawl that felt out of place in Oregon. Clara lives 3 houses down, I said, my pulse still racing. You can't just walk into people's houses. I knocked, he said, wincing. The door was open. I didn't mean to, he stopped, his gaze flickering over me, not in a predatory way, but with a quiet intensity that made my skin prickle. "I'm Lucas. Lucas Reed." I should have kicked him out right then. Should have called the cops, or at least grabbed my phone. But something in his eyes, raw, unguarded, made me pause. "Ethan," I said, against my better judgment. "You scared the shit out of me." "I can see that," Lucas said, a small, apologetic smile tugging at his lips. "I'll go. I'm sorry. Really." But he didn't move. And neither did I. The air between us felt charged, like the moment before a storm. I'd spent 2 years avoiding connection, keeping everyone at arm's length. My ex, Ryan, had left scars as cheating, his lies, his insistence that my bisexuality was just a phase. I'd sworn off trust, sworn off feeling. Yet here was this stranger, standing in my living room, looking at me like he saw something I'd forgotten existed. "Wait," I said, surprising myself. "You look tired. You want some water or something?" Why was I offering this? My brain screamed to stop, but my mouth kept going. "I mean, before you go." Lucas hesitated, then nodded. "That'd be nice." "Thanks." I grabbed a glass from the kitchen, my hands shaky. When I returned, Lucas was studying a photo on my mantel, a picture of me and my sister, Mia, laughing at the beach. "Nice family," he said softly. "Yeah, that's Mia. She's in Seattle now." I handed him the water. Our fingers brushed, and I pulled back too fast, heat creeping up my neck. He drank slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. "You don't have to be nice to me. You know, I'm the idiot who walked into your house." I laughed, a sharp, nervous sound. "Yeah, well, maybe I'm the idiot for not locking my door." That got a real smile from him, one that lit up his face and made my chest tighten. What was happening to me? I didn't know this guy. He could be a drifter, a con artist. But his presence felt like a spark in a room I'd kept dark for too long. "So, Lucas," I said, leaning against the counter, trying to sound casual. "What's your story? Why are you looking for Clara?" He set the glass down, his expression shifting to something guarded. Complicated. I'm passing through. Needed a place to crash for a few days. Clara's an old friend. Passing through to where? He shrugged, his smile fading. Haven't figured that out yet. The vagueness should have been a red flag, but instead, it intrigued me. There was a story behind those words, one he wasn't ready to tell. And for reasons I couldn't explain, I wanted to know it. Stay for dinner. I blurted out. I was about to make something. You look like you could use a meal. What was I doing? Inviting a stranger to stay. But the words were out, and I couldn't take them back. Lucas raised an eyebrow, surprised but not unwilling. You sure? I don't want to impose. You already did, I said, smirking. Might as well make it worth it. He laughed, a warm, rich sound that echoed in the quiet house. And just like that, the stranger who'd walked into my life uninvited became a guest. I didn't know it then, but that moment, his unexpected arrival, my impulsive invitation, would unravel everything I thought I knew about myself. As I chopped vegetables for a stir-fry, Lucas sat at the kitchen table, his backpack at his feet. He told me bits and pieces how he'd grown up in Alabama, left home at 18, traveled across the country doing odd jobs. He was careful, though, leaving gaps in his story I could feel but not see. I didn't push. Not yet. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the kitchen in shades of orange and pink. We ate in comfortable silence, the kind that felt more like understanding than awkwardness. Every now and then, our eyes met, and I'd look away, my heart doing that stupid flutter thing I hadn't felt in years. So, Ethan, Lucas said, leaning back in his chair. What's your deal? You live in this big house all alone. I nodded, poking at my food. Yeah. Just me. I like the quiet. Quiet's nice, he said, but his tone suggested he knew something about running from noise. But it can get lonely, can't it? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The truth hung between us, heavy and unspoken. That night, Lucas slept on my couch, his backpack tucked under his head like a pillow. I lay awake in my room upstairs, staring at the ceiling, wondering why I felt so alive for the first time in years. A stranger had walked into my house, and somehow, I wasn't afraid. I was curious. I was hopeful. And that terrified me more than anything. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee. Lucas was in the kitchen, fumbling with my ancient coffee maker, his hair a mess of curls. Hope you don't mind, he said, glancing over his shoulder. Figured I owed you for last night. I rubbed sleep from my eyes, trying not to notice how the morning light made his skin glow. You didn't have to, I said, but I took the mug he offered, our fingers brushing again. This time, I didn't pull away. We sat at the table, sipping coffee, the silence less heavy than the night before. So, I said, you find Clara yet? Lucas shook his head. Went by her place this morning. She's out of town. Left a note saying she'd be back in a week. So what's your plan? You just gonna wander around Willow Creek? He shrugged, that half-smile returning. Guess so. Unless you're offering to let me crash here again. I should have said no. I should have been practical, safe. But instead, I heard myself say, you can stay. Until Clara's back. Couch is yours. His eyes softened, and for a moment, I thought he might say something serious. Instead, he nodded. Thanks, Ethan. You're different. Different. The word stuck with me as I headed to the bookstore for my shift. All day, I replayed our conversations. The way his laugh felt like a melody I couldn't forget. By the time I got home, Lucas was sprawled on the couch, reading one of my Buxa-worn copy of The Great Gatsby. Good taste, I said, nodding at the book. He grinned. Figured I'd borrow it. Hope that's okay. It's fine. Just don't dog-ear the pages. We fell into an easy rhythm over the next few days. Lucas would be gone in the mornings, exploring the town or doing who knows what, and I'd come home from work to find him on the couch, reading or sketching in a small notebook he carried everywhere. He didn't talk much about himself, but I learned he was 30, loved jazz, and had a knack for fixing things me leaky faucet, the creaky porch step. Each small gesture felt like a thread weaving us closer. One evening, we walked to the town's diner, a retro place with neon signs and checkered floors. Over burgers and milkshakes, Lucas opened up a little more. I left Alabama because I didn't fit, he said, staring at his fries. Small town, big expectations. I'm gay, and that didn't go over well. I nodded, my throat tight. I get it. I'm bi. My ex, he didn't think that was real. Said I was confused. Lucas looked at me, his gaze steady. You're not confused. You're you. Those words hit harder than I expected. I'd spent years doubting myself, letting Ryan's voice echo in my head. But Lucas said it so simply, so surely, that I almost believed him. That night, back at the house, we sat on the porch, sharing a bottle of cheap wine. The air was cool, the stars bright above the cherry blossoms. You ever think about staying somewhere? I asked. Like putting down roots. Lucas leaned back, his shoulder brushing mine. Haven't found a reason to. Not yet. The not yet lingered, a promise or a question I wasn't ready to answer. I wanted to ask more, to know what kept him moving, what he was running from. But before I could, he turned to me, his face close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his eyes. Ethan, he said softly, why'd you let me stay? I swallowed, my heart pounding. I don't know. You feel like someone I was supposed to meet. He didn't laugh or look away. He just held my gaze, and for a moment, I thought he might lean closer. But he didn't. Instead, he smiled, a sad, beautiful thing. Your trouble, Ethan Caldwell. So are you, I said, and we both laughed, the tension breaking like a wave. But the tension returned, stronger each day. A brush of hands while cooking, a shared glance that lasted too long. I was falling for him, and it scared me to death. I'd built walls for a reason, and Lucas was tearing them down without even trying. By the 5th day, I couldn't ignore it anymore. We were in the living room, a jazz record playing softly. Lucas was sketching, his pencil moving with quiet precision. I watched him, the way his brow furrowed, the way his lips curved when he was pleased with a line. What are you drawing? I asked, sitting beside him. He hesitated, then turned the notebook toward me. It was a sketch of the house, the bay window glowing with light, cherry blossoms framing the scene. But in the window, there were two figures and him, standing close, our outlines soft but unmistakable. It's beautiful, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me, his eyes searching. It's what I see when I'm here. My breath caught. The room felt too small, too warm. I wanted to say something, to close the distance between us, but fear held me back. What if I was wrong? What if he left, like everyone else? But then Lucas set the notebook down and leaned closer, his hand resting on mine. Ethan, he said, his voice low, I don't know what this is, but I feel it too. And just like that, the walls I'd built crumbled. The moment Lucas's hand touched mine, the world shifted. His fingers were warm, steady, grounding me in a way I hadn't felt in years. I wanted to pull away, to protect myself, but I didn't. I couldn't. "Lucas," I said, my voice shaky, "what are we doing?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he moved closer, his knee brushing mine. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I know I don't want to leave. Not yet." The jazz record spun on, filling the silence with soft, soulful notes. I looked at him, really looked at him, the lines of his face, the weight in his eyes, the way he seemed both lost and found. "You don't have to," I said. "Stay? As long as you want." His smile was small, almost disbelieving. "You don't even know me, Ethan." "I know enough," I said, and I meant it. I knew the way he laughed, the way he fixed things without being asked, the way he looked at me like I was more than my scars. Maybe it was reckless, maybe it was naive, but I didn't care. He leaned in then, slow, giving me time to pull back. I didn't. Our lips met, tentative at first, then deeper, like we were both starving for something we couldn't name. His hand cupped my face, and I felt everything: fear, hope, longing all at once. When we pulled apart, my heart was racing, my mind a blur. "I haven't done this in a long time," I admitted, my voice barely steady. "Me neither," he said, his thumb brushing my cheek. "But it feels right." It did. And that was the problem. Nothing this good ever lasted. Not for me. The next few days were a haze of stolen moments, kisses in the kitchen, late-night talks on the porch, his hand finding mine under the table. Lucas was still guarded, still leaving gaps in his story, but I didn't press. I was too caught up in the way he made me feel, like I was waking up after years of sleep. But reality crept in. Clara returned, and Lucas went to see her. When he came back, his face was tight, his shoulders hunched. "She's letting me stay at her place," he said, not meeting my eyes. "I should go?" My stomach dropped. "You don't have to," I said, too quickly. "You can stay here." He shook his head. "You've done enough, Ethan. I don't want to mess up your life." "You're not," I said, stepping closer. "You're part of it now." He looked at me then, his eyes raw. "You don't know what you're signing up for." "Then tell me," I said, my voice firm. "Tell me what you're running from." For a long moment, he was silent. Then he sat on the couch, his hands clasped tightly. "I left Alabama because of my family," he said. "They didn't just disapprove of me being gay, they tried to fix me. Conversion therapy, the whole deal. I ran as soon as I could. But it's not just them. I've been running from myself, too. From what it means to let someone in." My chest ached. I sat beside him, close but not touching. "You're not broken, Lucas. And you don't have to run anymore." He looked at me, tears in his eyes. "You make me want to believe that." "Then believe it," I said, taking his hand. "Stay? Let's figure this out together." He didn't say yes, but he didn't leave either. That night, he slept in my bed, not on the couch. We didn't do anything but hold each other, his head on my chest, my fingers in his hair. It was enough. More than enough. But the next morning, I woke to an empty bed. A note was on the pillow: "Ethan, I need to figure some things out. I'll be back. I promise." Lucas. Panic clawed at me. I called Clara, but she hadn't seen him. I drove through town, checking the diner, the park, anywhere he might be. Nothing. He was gone. Just like that. And I was left with the ghost of his touch and a promise I wasn't sure he'd keep. Days turned into a week, and Lucas didn't return. I went through the motions: work, home, sleep, but everything felt hollow. The house, once a refuge, now felt too big, too quiet. His sketchbook was still on the coffee table, the drawing of us in the window taunting me. I couldn't bring myself to move it. I called Mia, spilling everything. "You let a stranger stay in your house," she said, half laughing, half worried. "Ethan, you're insane." "I know," I said. But he wasn't just a stranger. He was something else. "Sounds like you fell hard," she said softly. "What are you gonna do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Wait, I guess." Waiting was torture. Every creak of the door made my heart leap, only to crash when it wasn't him. I started locking the door, a habit I'd never bothered with before. Willow Creek felt smaller without him, the cherry blossoms less vibrant. Then, on the 8th day, a knock. I opened the door, and there he was, Lucas, looking tired but alive, his backpack slung over his shoulder. "Hey," he said, his voice soft. "Can I come in?" I wanted to be angry, to demand answers, but all I could do was nod. He stepped inside, and the house felt whole again. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice breaking. He set his bag down, his eyes searching mine. "I went to Seattle. Needed to clear my head. I got scared. Ethan. This thing between yous, it's real. And I don't know how to do real." "So you just left?" I said, anger creeping in. "No call. No text. Just a note." "I know," he said, stepping closer. "I'm sorry." I panicked. But I couldn't stay away. I wanted to stay mad, but his honesty disarmed me. "What do you want?" "Lucas." "Really?" "You," he said, no hesitation. "I want you. But I'm a mess. Ethan. I don't know if I'm good enough for this." I took his hand, my thumb brushing his knuckles. "You don't have to be perfect. Just be here." He kissed me then, fierce and desperate, like he was afraid I'd vanish. I kissed him back, pouring everything me fear, my hope, my need into it. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "I'm staying," he whispered. "For real this time." And he did. Over the next weeks, Lucas settled into my life. He got a job at the local hardware store, his knack for fixing things coming in handy. We cooked together, laughed together, argued over stupid things like whose turn it was to do dishes. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. But there was still a shadow. Lucas's past wasn't just a story, it was a weight he carried. Late at night, he'd wake up sweating, muttering apologies to people I didn't know. I held him, whispering that he was safe, but I knew he wasn't fully free. One evening, he got a call. His face went pale as he listened, then hung up without a word. "My brother," he said finally. "He's coming to Willow Creek. He wants to talk." "Your brother?" I asked, my stomach twisting. "The one from Alabama?" Lucas nodded, his jaw tight. "Yeah. Nate. He was part of why I left." I didn't know what that meant, but I could feel the storm coming. And I knew, whatever happened, we'd face it together. Nate's arrival was set for a Saturday. Lucas was a wreck all week, pacing the house, barely eating. I tried to be his anchor, but I could feel him slipping, retreating into the fear he'd carried for years. "Talk to me," I said one night, pulling him onto the couch. "What's Nate like?" Lucas sighed, running a hand through his hair. He's older. Protective, but in a controlling way. When I came out, he didn't yell like my parents. He just looked at me like I'd betrayed him. He drove me to the conversion camp himself. I winced, imagining a younger Lucas, scared and alone. You don't have to see him, I said. Not if it hurts you. He says he's changed, Lucas said, his voice hollow. Says he wants to make things right. I don't know if I believe him, but I need to know. I nodded, squeezing his hand. I'll be there. Whatever you need. Saturday came too fast. Nate pulled up in a dusty pickup truck, his broad shoulders and stern face a stark contrast to Lucas's softer features. He looked like a man who carried the weight of his convictions, right or wrong. Lucas, Nate said, stepping onto the porch. His voice was gruff, but there was something else. Regret. Maybe. Nate, Lucas said, his body tense. I stood behind him, a silent promise of support. They talked for hours, first on the porch, then inside. I stayed close but gave them space, listening from the kitchen. Nate's voice was low, apologetic, but Lucas's was sharp, full of years of pain. You let them do that to me, Lucas said at one point, his voice breaking. You stood by while they tried to erase me. I know, Nate said. I was wrong. I was scared, and I thought I was saving you. I'm sorry, Lucas. I'm so damn sorry. I held my breath, waiting for Lucas's response. When it came, it was quiet but firm. I needed you to be my brother, not my judge. Nate left that evening, promising to keep in touch. Lucas was quiet, but when we went to bed, he held me tighter than ever. Thank you, he whispered, for being here. Always, I said, and I meant it. The weeks that followed were lighter. Lucas started opening up more, not just to me, but to the town. He joined a local art group, his sketches turning into vibrant paintings. Willow Creek embraced him, and I watched him bloom, the weight of his past lifting little by little. But love, I learned, wasn't just the highs. It was the quiet moments, the fights over nothing, the fear of losing what you'd found. One night, we argued something stupid about leaving dishes in the sink. It escalated, old insecurities bubbling up. You don't get it, I snapped. I'm scared you'll leave again. And I'm scared you'll wake up and realize I'm not worth this. He shot back. We stared at each other, the air thick with hurt. Then he crossed the room, pulling me into a hug. I'm not going anywhere, he said. Not unless you tell me to. I won't, I said, my voice muffled against his shoulder. I love you. It was the first time I'd said it. Lucas froze, then pulled back to look at me. I love you too, he said, his voice breaking. God, Ethan, I love you so much. We kissed, and it felt like a vow, a promise to face whatever came next together. Life with Lucas became a rhythm, a dance of ordinary and extraordinary. We'd wake up tangled in each other, argue over who made better coffee, and steal kisses while cooking dinner. Willow Creek, once just a backdrop, became our home, its streets and people weaving into our story. But the past has a way of lingering. One afternoon, I found Lucas staring at an old photo he'd tucked into his sketchbook, a picture of him and Nate as kids, grinning in a field. I talked to him yesterday, Lucas said, his voice quiet. He's trying. Wants me to visit Alabama. I sat beside him, my hand on his knee. Do you want to go? I don't know, he said. Part of me wants to see if things can be different. Part of me's scared it'll drag me back to who I was. You're not that person anymore, I said. And you won't be alone. I'll go with you. His eyes widened. You do that? For you? Yeah. We planned a trip for spring, when the cherry blossoms would be in full bloom again. The idea of facing Lucas's past was daunting, but I wanted him to know he didn't have to do it alone. We spent weeks preparing, talking through what it might mean, what we might face. It brought us closer, the shared vulnerability a kind of glue. The night before we left, we sat on the porch, the air warm and sweet. Lucas took my hand, his fingers tracing patterns on my skin. You know, he said, when I walked into this house, I was lost. I didn't think I'd find anything like this. Like you. I leaned my head on his shoulder. I didn't think I'd let anyone in again. But you changed everything. He kissed me, soft and slow, and I felt its certainty that this was worth fighting for, worth the fear and the risk. The trip to Alabama was tense. Lucas's hometown was small, conservative, a place where eyes followed us as we walked hand in hand. His parents' house was a modest ranch style, the air thick with unspoken history. His mother, Ellen, greeted us with cautious warmth, but his father, Robert, was distant, his eyes hard. Dinner was awkward, the silence broken only by clinking forks. Then Robert spoke. So, Lucas, you're happy now? Lucas's hand tightened around mine under the table. Yeah, Dad. I am. Robert nodded, his face unreadable. Later, Ellen pulled me aside. He's different with you, she said. Happier. Thank you for that. It wasn't acceptance. Not fully, but it was a start. Lucas and I left the next day, his shoulders lighter, his smile brighter. I didn't think I'd ever come back here, he said as we drove away. But I'm glad I did. With you. Back in Willow Creek, we settled into a new normal. Lucas's paintings started selling at the local gallery, and I got a promotion at the bookstore. We talked about the future, maybe a bigger house, maybe a dog. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was enough. One evening, as the cherry blossoms fell like snow, Lucas took me to the backyard. He'd set up a small table, candles flickering in the dusk. What's this? I asked, laughing. He took my hands, his eyes serious. Ethan, you gave me a home when I didn't have one. You gave me a reason to stop running. I want to build a life with you. Here. Anywhere. Will you marry me? My heart stopped, then raced. I'd never thought I'd hear those words. Not after everything. But looking at him, I knew my answer. Yes, I said, tears in my eyes. Yes. He slipped a simple silver ring onto my finger, and we kissed, the world fading away. The stranger who'd walked into my house had become my home, my future, my everything. We married in the spring, under the cherry blossoms, surrounded by friends and Mia, who cried harder than I did. Nate came too, his presence a quiet testament to change. It wasn't a fairy tale, there were still fights, still fears, but it was ours, built on trust and love and the courage to let someone in. That night, as we danced under the stars, Lucas whispered, "I'm glad I got the address wrong." I laughed, pulling him close. Me too. And as the music played, I knew this was just the beginning. A stranger had walked into my house, and that night had become a story of love, one that would last a lifetime.